suggest the use of agent-based methods. And if you see this list, you will notice that, hang on, I've seen Facebook and I've seen Wikipedia and so on, and where are the agents there? So sometimes it's not so obvious whether agent technology is actually used in the things for which it would be most appropriate. So just to wrap up, the agents field is very diverse, very inclusive. A friend from machine learning once told me, I submitted a paper to this agents conference and they immediately accepted it, even though they didn't even know me and I never even knew anything about agents. So, we are very open and it's a very broad church, and you see all kinds of people if you go to these conferences, from psychologists to hardcore engineers. There is a mix of very formal and very informal approaches. So there are very theoretical people and very applied people. So this also means that what all these different people are trying to do can be quite different, right? So it's hard to discern what the big achievements are and to tell somebody outside your area that, this is what we do and we do it best. Also, it's hard to get a big picture of the whole field. There is a lot of fragmentation, of course, if there are sub areas that work on these different things. But it also makes it very exciting and very interesting. So my personal view is that it's a great field to be in. I hope that if you're not that familiar with it after this week, you will think the same. Where sometimes there is a dangerous temptation that, because you talk about agents and then you talk about collectives of agents, well, in theory that's everything, right? So that's in theory all of human society and all machines and all computers and all parrots. But, so it's a danger in science to try and talk about everything, because then you say very little about anything specific. So that's something to keep in mind. Also the tension between these small and big approaches. If you make a system very complex and very, very applied, then you can demonstrate a lot of impact because it does great useful things, and it's much more realistic than a small theoretical model. But it's also much harder to compare because it will be very specific and very domain, very much tailored to the domain, and you will not have the big theorems. On the other hand, if you want the math and the small models and the neat things, then those are very removed from things that really people need in the real world. So I think this is an area that has a lot to offer for building next generation intelligent technologies. And I think looking at what's happening around us in terms of the technology that's emerging, this is the right time to do it, and I hope you will agree with me and learn more about the various subfields so that you can become the future experts that will drive this revolution. Thank you very much. It says participation also, so now you can ask a question.
Maybe a question?
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Will you have a drink? So, Georgios, how much time do you think I get?
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me here for this week. The first thing I'd like to say is that I'm not Pablo Noriega. Pablo Noriega is this guy, okay? And he asked me to represent him in this talk. So my name is Carla Sierra, and I will try and tell you something about his ideas on Syntelnet, which is co-organizer of this week here. So this is supposed to be the first school on the topic of social intelligence, which is something you're going to hear in my short talk now, but during the week. And I mean, this talk is an invitation for you to pay attention to this emerging field and give you some background for the tutorials. So I can start with the obvious. I mean, in the past years we have been witnessing the emergence of a social and technological phenomenon. We just look at the different applications that you have here. This is provoked by the somehow surprising use of internet. So it's a very recent technology and it has widespread in a massive way. The thing is that although the phenomenon is very important for the massive uptake of social networks and mostly by young people, I mean the phenomenon in fact affects society as a whole and pervades all sorts of activities. I mean you have from crowd-based systems to online markets to normative multi-agent systems, mixed games where you have humans and avatars, policy support systems. So this phenomenon is really becoming something that is bringing a large new breed of socio-cognitive technological systems. So this is kind of changing the phase of what artificial intelligence has been so far. So we are seeing a change in the way social entities do things. They are enabling society to do completely new things. And this is changing and having a dramatic effect on how society think of itself, how we think of others, how we think of ourselves, and even what do we think is reality. You just witness what young people are doing with computers these days and how they feel like reality and the visual representation is different. We see people doing videos and uploading them to internet, so in which we have a completely citizen-based approach at what is happening. The Arab Revolution in the recent years, I mean, how the information flew into everybody. So the way we see reality is changing thanks to this emerging socio-cognitive system movement. So, although we see the system changing our daily life, I mean, the long-term impact of these systems is very difficult to assess. So where are going to be in 10 years is very difficult. Things are happening very quickly. We, of course, can be certain that some substantial impact will happen in our society in the next years. Stephen Hawking said a few weeks ago that I would say artificial social intelligence may be the coolest thing humanity has ever created, but it may be its last one. So in other words, I mean, we need to understand very well how societies change to avoid the negative consequences of this kind of radical innovation. And on the one hand, and on the other, we would like not to miss the opportunities that all these technologies are bringing to us. So we have a twofold challenge. So we have to, on the one hand, understand how this new artificial social world works. And on the other hand, we need to develop the appropriate tools to deal with these new emerging technology. So in other words, so we need to develop new paradigms to design a new form of hybrid social intelligence where we mix natural and artificial. This, in the words of Cristiano Castelfranchi and Luca Tumoilini, requires that we have to address a number of topics in the development of these future systems. So we are no longer concerned only on achieving individual rationality, making the best decision, which has been the focus of research for many years. But with rationality in interaction with others and within a social environment that affects and is affected by the actions of individuals. So it's not just thinking on how to do something well, but to do something well in the context of others doing things well. So this is completely different from what we have been doing in engineering for the last 50 years. So we need new agent models that will be necessarily social cognitive. It will need to be aware of the society where they are, and they will need to have cognitive capabilities to interact with humans, because we are facing mixed societies of humans and software. So, in order to build such artificial social cognitive systems, there is a need, and this is a bit the stance of Sintelnet. So there is a need of sound interdisciplinary research between computer science, but also with engineering, cognitive sciences, philosophy, economics, and sociology. So there must be a kind of a mutual cross-breeding between the different areas in order to be successful. So, summing up, the social and technological revolution that we are witnessing creates an opportunity as well as an obligation on all of us. We need to develop this new scientific field, and we need to develop and engineer artifacts in a responsible way. While in the 50s we had artificial intelligence being conceived, focusing on individual rationality, now we have a new AI being kind of formed, in which rational individuals live in a social world. And we cannot avoid that because of the many examples I just showed you at the beginning. So this summer school, the idea is that it may allow you to get a first-hand view on how this kind of social intelligence is being conformed. In the 50s, if you look at what happened after the World War II, I mean, it was a zeitgeist for artificial intelligence. So the spirit of the time, you can situate yourself in that moment where cybernetics and control was really very important with Wiener and others. The limits of computability and first order logic were set in the 30s by Gödel and others. The work by Alan Turing, thinking computer as a brain, I mean, can machines think? That was his main paper in the 1950s. So game theory was developed in the 40s. So there was a moment, mathematical decision theory was developed, econometrics. So there was a moment in which people thought that the new computers being developed, the new limits of knowledge creation that were set by the more logician or mathematicians, set the point in which, why can't we make computers think? And at that moment, there was this group of people coming from a number of fields, mathematics, the early engineering, cybernetics, that started trying to answer that question. And basically, during the next 50 years, we have been kind of working on the field, and we came with some paradigmatic notions on top of a number of paradigmatic problems. So easily and quickly appeared a number of problems like chess, how to play well chess, natural language understanding, I mean, how can we understand people talking? Or theorem proving, these typical mathematical activities. How can we solve these clearly, these problems where intelligence was needed by human beings? And then the notions, the paradigmatic notions of all these years have been, you have a few of them listed here. Reasoning, how can we reason? How can we plan? How can we represent knowledge and make it operational on a computer? How can we learn? So these were the big notions that the field had for 50 years looking into those problems. So the idea is that we believe that we are a similar junction, and we are probably called to discover the corresponding notions and paradigmatic problems of artificial social intelligence. We are not yet there. We can have a list of what science and technology provides us now. So we have the agents paradigm. We have just heard some introduction on the topic. There is people working on non-monological logic. So logic's about different individuals talking to each other and how to represent that in logic. Agreement technologies are popping up. So how can you make agreements between humans, software components? Distributed computing is all around. I mean, you have just to see the recent 10 years on grid computing, on cloud computing. Social choice. I mean, we want to give citizens the possibility of deciding by using IT technologies. Behavioral game theory. We have heard about game theory as an important trend in research. Analytical sociology. Now sociologists have the tools to try and test their theories and have a clear insight of their models. The expansion of social networks. Nanotechnology coming now, allowing small devices to interact in many different ways with humans. E-everything. So this is the science and technology we have around, and we know there are conferences and there are papers and people working on all that. At the same time, we have quite mature AI technologies. I mean, the technologies of the language are very well developed. Planning technologies. We have a lot of abundant digital content. It's massive, the content that is generated every day. And the massive uptake of web-enabled activities. Everybody is connected these days, so everybody is using a web browser on a daily basis. And this blurring of the real and the artificial, I mean, these extended reality systems in which we kind of change the perception of what reality is. During this week, you're going to see a number of tutorials that go in line with these current science and technology. I mean, you will have logic for multi-agent systems, you will have a formal analysis of social concepts, voting, norm synthesis, trust, human agent collectives, and so on. So you have a large list of elements that will tell you what is the current developments of those technologies. Well, that was Pablo's idea. This is a project I've been working on and that he wanted me to illustrate you an example of combination of these different technologies. And to do that, I have a video that I hope will work. Just 4 minutes, we can listen to it. We need volume.
Our project is called EASSS, which is about
Can I control the volume?
to try and enhance online cultural experiences for everyone. The idea with using intelligent personal agents is that they can act on our behalf kind of automatically because they have a model of our desires and our beliefs and things like our intentions and opinions. So we take advantage of those in our project. And we've got a kind of novel computer architecture which allows these agents to communicate and negotiate on behalf of their human users to encourage a stronger sense of what we call a shared experience during online visits to cultural institutions such as archives and museums and galleries. And the kind of project is inspired by the fact that many of us are very highly motivated to want to share our experiences with others. Most of us prefer to visit sporting events, concerts, theatre plays, even shopping with others. But sometimes it's not possible for all kinds of reasons, which could be social reasons, could be physical reasons. So we want to know whether we can create a sense of shared experience in an online context. In December 2012, we produced a prototype that we called We Curate. The system is specifically designed with the idea that users would share their views, their understanding of digital image, and in real time in order to collectively create an exhibition, a kind of collaborative exhibition. We were lucky enough to be able to evaluate it at one of London's leading museums, called the Horniman Museum, which is known for its anthropology, its collection of musical instruments, natural history collections, and has an acclaimed aquarium and an award-winning garden. And during our time there, museum visitors were able to come and use a set of iPads and share their experiences and views of digital images that belonged to the Horniman archive. They were set the challenge of working together but on these different devices, which you could imagine could be separated across London or the UK or wherever, to choose a sub-selection of these images for their own curation. So how would they negotiate and work together to work out the exhibition that they felt represented them as a group? So logging into the We Curate system, we could indicate how much they liked to dislike images from the museum's collection. At each step, they were always aware of the judgment of the other participants. And it's very important for a sense of collective and shared experience. Next, they were able to add tags to images they liked and able to discuss them using text messages which were shared between them all. They could resize or delete these tags in order to demonstrate their particular preferences. Of course, new tags could be added, and these would be shared with the whole group. And then finally, once everyone had a sense of what the group thought between them, they could vote on whether to keep the image in their collaboratively curated virtual exhibition. So we're currently evaluating the results of this prototype about how people use it and might want to use it in order that we can redesign our system so that it becomes possible then that people can visit museums, art galleries and theatres with friends and strangers and have some sense of this shared experience that motivates so many of us. So shared online cultural experience will now be available or planned by the end of the project through the handheld device, which is in many of our pockets. And of course, you don't necessarily have to be in the gallery. You can be anywhere in the world to do this, and I think that's really important. But of course, in many cases, there's nothing quite like going to galleries and museums by ourselves or with others physically. But often things stop us. So the hope is that through the social, fun experiences allowed by our project, we can break down some of these barriers and so engage just a bit more with our cultural heritage.
Okay, so why this video here? I mean, it was just to illustrate you on the type of applications that are popping up, in which the interaction between humans and agents are key. You don't see them, but there are a number of agents behind the stage. When you see the kids expressing their preferences for images, there are agents doing aggregation of preferences and taking decisions of different kinds. For instance, if there is disagreement, a pop-up discussion with these bubbles where people would express using tags why they liked a particular image and where they could kind of argue, in a sense, are there. So there are humans interacting, but there are agents also interacting with them on the background. There is also this blur between reality and image. I mean, when you see people zooming on one part of the image to see better the picture, the others see an icon representing that person on that image. So you have a sense of immediacy of what the others are doing. When you see someone express their preferences, the others are feeling that preference. So there is a kind of a social notion of being together in solving a problem cooperatively. And you saw also the voting mechanism that appeared when there was no agreement reached by the people discussing. So and again, there are agents behind all these faces. So these kind of mixed societies of humans and agents are already now here, and they will appear in much more intense way in the next decade. But the problem, although we have this list of our zeitgeist or the signs of the times, it's reasonably easy to have that list of science and technology. So it's far more difficult to know what the paradigmatic notions are and what the paradigmatic problems are. So what is the problem we want to solve? Before it was playing chess, what do we want to solve now? And what are the basic notions? I mean, we have the list of technologies, but what is the equivalent of planning in the past, currently? So all this is still very, very undecided. We can pinpoint to some paradigmatic research lines, and this is what Internet somehow is trying to focus, organizing working groups to try and explore this space that these research lines are proposing. You see here action and agency, communicative interaction, group attitudes, socio-technical epistemology, and social coordination. These are the working groups of the coordinated action that we have. But still, I insist, the notions and the problems are to be defined. So this is the mission. You can read it about what is a FED coordinated action. So the idea is to explore the notion of social intelligence, that's the idea. And as any other coordinated action, it supports networking activities. So the idea is to identify people and interests around social intelligence in order to create a community of researchers around the topic, give visibility to the area, and outreach different communities that should be aware of the topic. So there are two, it's bidirectional. So the idea is how social cognitive systems put into question or shed light into what traditional theories in the humanities, philosophy, and the social sciences have proposed. So we give them somehow tools for them to test their theories. And the other thing is how to use an interdisciplinary approach to produce new artificial social cognitive systems. So what can these fields bring in order to build more sound IT systems? So the working groups, I will just go through them very quickly. The one on action and agency is organized by Marek Sergot, is coordinated by Marek Sergot, who will be one of the tutors in this school. And these are the kind of questions that this working group is putting to themselves. For instance, what it means for an agent to act. I mean, voluntarily, knowingly, deliberately. I mean, what does it mean to act? The second working group is the communicative interaction, organized by Andrew Jones and Peter McBurney. Andrew Jones will be here as another tutor of this school. Questions, you can read them here. I mean, how should communicative interaction, including deceitful communication interaction, be characterized? What does it mean to communicate? I mean, people have looked into that from the linguistics perspective in the old times. What we can tell about communicative interaction in these new social intelligence systems? Group attitudes by Andrea Skerzik and Emiliano Lorini. So the idea is to study the aspects that pertain to the groups of individuals. And you have a few illustrative questions here. Can we attribute a joint intention to a team involving both artificial and human agents? Does it make sense? What does it mean? More from the philosophical perspective, Cristiano Castelfranchi and Luca Tumolini, they are coordinating a working group on socio-technical epistemology. So it's about questions on how ICT affects the way society deals with knowledge. What new forms of knowledge are appearing? How can we enable artificial agents or multi-agent systems with capabilities to deal with knowledge, the new knowledge that is created? Social coordination, coordinated by Pablo Noriega. So classical aspects of governance are changed by this new research. The means, the instruments, the institutions, notions of compliance, enforcement, blame, evolution, all this has to be rethought in light of the new developments. So these working groups have organized a number of workshops to explore the topics I just mentioned. But the Sintelnet coordinated action has been fostering community building and diffusion by funding short-time academic visits. So if you are interested in a short trip to another research group, this can be funded by Sintelnet, and supporting events that are akin to its mission. So two Sintelnet activities this year are worth mentioning. One is this summer school, where a lot of the funding comes from the coordinated action, and the forthcoming European Conference on Social Intelligence. In terms of the tutorials, here you have again a list of tutorials funded in this case by Sintelnet. Well, actually no. Well, anyway, some of these topics are funded by Sintelnet. And the other thing, and with this I will finish, the other activity of Sintelnet this year is the European Conference on Social Intelligence. This will happen in Barcelona in November. And basically, the idea is to gather people interested in this area of artificial social intelligence to discuss about these questions and others, to provide guidance for research, policy making, to establish partnerships among participants and team up. So the idea is that submissions for this conference should have a forward-looking perspective. So we need to know what the new notions are, we need to know what the new problems are. So we are not, all the conference organizers are not expecting you to explain a very tiny technical progress on a particular topic, but more a kind of a view of how the field can be shaped. So you open your laptops and start writing your papers. I mean, the deadline is September the 3rd. And as I said, the conference will be in November in Barcelona. And if you want more information, here you have the URL for Sintelnet, so you can see there the opportunities for exchanges, the opportunity for workshop organization that the coordinated action offers. And with this, I hope I don't misrepresent Pablo too much, but I will close my short talk. Thank you very much. Of course, I don't know if there are any questions, but I will be happy to try and answer them. If not, there is coffee. Oh, yeah, sure, sorry.
You said the iteration is not the same that communication between agents. So can you explain a little bit the difference?
So basically in the 50s, the idea of interaction was not kind of the major issue. So the major issue for artificial intelligence has been traditionally about developing a single artificial intelligence in which you, using knowledge representation techniques or planning or decision theoretic stuff, take decisions about solving a particular problem. So it's you playing chess. Now, the focus, because of the motivation I gave at the beginning, is that this is no longer the case in current applications and will not longer be the case for artificial intelligence. A sentence that Mike Wooldridge said that in a sense we are facing a superset of artificial intelligence because we are adding to the individual rationality the notion of interaction, perception of the environment, embodiment, situatedness in the environment, which already appeared in the late 80s, late 90s. But now it's becoming essential. You cannot imagine any AI application these days without thinking of interacting with the environment and interacting with others. So interaction has become kind of the key issue in all the developments. And the research of multi-agent systems has clearly a focus on that. But this is becoming more widespread, I mean, in computer science in general. So yeah, interaction and communication become key.
Thank you.
So I guess it's time for a coffee break. There is coffee and sandwiches just out the door. And please make sure to taste this local delicacy, this pasta, Rovatsos. So we're a bit late, and it's 10 to 11. I guess we should make this a fast break. And let's say that tutorial should commence at 5 or 10 past 11, the latest. The one tutorial given by Carles will be in this amphitheater, and the second tutorial is at room 2041, which is just next to the parking lot. Volunteers will guide you there. Anyone can freely switch among tutorials. You can attend any tutorial you want. So, go with it.
Do we have a choice of tutorials?
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure if we do right now. I think maybe there's only one.
I'm going on the other one. You didn't talk with your Superman, but oh my god!
Oh my god, you take up so much space for a small person.
Yeah. But for an English person.